What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Kuhn. Gabe, how you doing, brother?
What's up, brother? Good to see your face, man. Know what I was thinking about before I even came on air tonight?
What's that?
I haven't been in the same room with you or Ken in years to do this podcast, man. I miss
Feels
it.
like it. Feels
I
like
miss it. Haven't seen your face in person since, what was it, Italian Fest?
Since Italian Fest.
Shit.
When was that? May?
This summer. This summer. Yeah, it's been a long while, brother.
Been a minute.
But good to see you.
How was the weekend, Gabe?
Oh, it was fun. It was a good time. Had a bunch of family in, had a baby shower over at the house, and just have a bunch of stuff, man. Just a bunch of stuff in the house that we got to unpack and deal with before the kid comes, before my baby boy comes. So we'll figure it out. My dad decided to just because they moved from St. Louis to San Diego, and he has a bunch of stuff just left over, my old stuff at the old house that I lived in, in high school. And he decided to bring all that to me this weekend too. So just added to the pile of stuff, straight up stuff. And I'm like, you could have picked another weekend to send this to me or bring it. But hey, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everybody that was there this weekend. It was a fun time. It really was a fun time.
Yeah, and Taylor posted some pictures from it. And for people that don't know this, Tom is even bigger than you. Like he kind of dwarfs you.
He's 6'5". I'm 6'4". He's big man.
He looks like
big fella.
6'7".
I know. You know what? The worst thing for him though in high school, he never got to play football because he went to a little private school.
They didn't have a team
in New Mexico, and they didn't offer it. So he was he was probably the biggest soccer player in New Mexico. He might have
been the biggest high school soccer player in the United States.
He wasn't as thick as me in high school, though. We can admit that.
He's a little slimmer.
Yeah, he was a lot slimmer. We know that like our generation got all the preservatives in the food. We like their steroid. Our food is just basically stabbed with steroids. So he didn't get that same diet growing up.
That same dosage that we got.
Yeah, but he is a big man. He's a big man. My whole side of the family, his side of the family is huge. Like my aunt's 6 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big everywhere.
Yeah.
To be fully candid, I was
big everywhere. Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Well, to be fully candid, I was in Gatlinburg from Wednesday to yesterday for my friend's wedding. And so we all stayed in the same house Wednesday night through Saturday night. And so I'm going to be honest, I am kind of cooked right now. I might.
Y'all stay up in the little Smokies? Was it nice?
Yes, it was awesome. It was a great time. A lot of fun, small, intimate wedding, really just everybody that's very close to each other. I think there was, including the wedding party, maybe like 40 people at the wedding. So it was really cool.
That's intimate.
Intimate. It was good to be, with everybody the whole time. My buddy that just got married, he actually lives right outside of Atlanta, and they've been there for a couple years now. So we don't see them that often. So it was good to see them and, be with, we went on his bachelor trip, obviously, but to spend that much time and, leading up to the wedding was really cool. But I did not get much sleep this weekend.
Did you at the wedding though? Was it on Friday or Saturday?
Saturday.
So did you have like the 4 screen pulled up on your phone on ESPN Plus?
Not during the wedding, but afterwards. That's kind of what we did during the reception. The wedding was at the house also, so it was great. Like rehearsal was at the house, wedding was at the house. We never had to leave. We literally walked straight out the back porch, and that's where the wedding was. So it was great. So at the reception, we had all the tables set up, and there was probably hit the spring on the mic. Sorry.
You good? You gonna be all right?
But there was probably 4 or 5 people with different games on at the reception on the phone. So that's kind of where we were at. We didn't get to catch too much of Ohio State, Oregon.
That's a shame. That's a hell of a game.
Yeah,
that was a hell of a game.
We caught the end of it, fortunately. So we got the end of that game. We got the end of LSU Ole Miss. We got the end of Florida, Tennessee, which all 3 of those games came down to the wire. So we caught the important stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. Like Dan Lanning, after you probably saw him after the game, just pushing and shoving everybody, having a hell of a time. Saw him with Will Compton and Taylor Lewan were there. bus
Yeah.
of boys, and they're having a good old time. Like, honestly, it was a hell of a weekend for my first Norvell staff at the University of Memphis. Like, think about it. Kenny Dillingham on Friday beat Utah, had the field storming. Silverfield handled business, although we'll get to that in a second. Wasn't the most impressive win in the world against South Florida, but you win a game that you had circled in the preseason.
Yep.
And you had Dain with the Saturday night just thriller, 32-31.
Back and forth.
Over Ohio State, who everybody thought was just one of those undeniable college football playoff national champion caliber teams.
Right.
So that they're on that level too.
Yeah. And we will cover that in depth in the Hot Three. We'll talk a lot more about some of those games specifically. But Gabe, this week, let's start it off with a little bit of Memphis basketball, because you guys are watching this on Tuesday, October 15th, which means the exhibition game will be happening tonight against North Carolina, the Hoops for St. Jude. Tip-off classic from all sources, from everything we're hearing. Tickets are selling well, which I think is probably the biggest part. Not probably, it is the biggest part about this.
Yeah.
Yes, but basketball is important. We care about Memphis and what they do against North Carolina, but just the cause that this is for with St. Jude and what the money for this event goes to is by far and away the most important thing. So it's cool to see tickets selling. If you haven't gotten tickets yet, go get those. Get down to the FedEx Forum. Check out the game. Even if you don't go to the game, buy some tickets. It's for one of the best causes you could possibly have an event for. So on that note, let's talk a little bit on the basketball side of things. Memphis, North Carolina, how are you feeling about this matchup? Once again, we talked about it last week, not from the win-loss perspective, but just from what we could see and what we want to see in this first exhibition game.
I have two big things I want to see from this team. North Carolina is obviously the number 9 team in the country in the AP poll. We'll get to the AP poll, but Memphis didn't get any votes in it. Good thing they have a good out of conference though. But two things I want to see. One, I want to see them be intentional about getting Dainja the basketball. I want to see that happen. I've heard so many good things about him in training camp, the weight he's lost, how he's moving around. He can be a connector of sorts, decent passer. He can put the ball on the ground. He can shoot from the mid-range a little bit. But with all of the talent he has, I don't think since the second half of the season with Jalen Duren, they've been very intentional about getting a natural big 5 the ball. So I want to see them be intentional about that off the jump. And then also I want to see their three-point shooting. Can Tyrese Hunter, PJ Haggerty, PJ Carter sort of supplement what Colby Rogers can do? Because I talked about that being a concern last week, right? You have Colby Rogers, who can be a knockdown 40% three-point shooter, but outside of that, you have a lot of guys that hover around 30 to 33%.
Yeah.
And you have to see who can supplement that type of shooting, because you're going to need it in the out of conference to take down a lot of these really good teams you're going to play.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to me, I kind of talked about my biggest point last week with just the chemistry, the gelling of this team, and I think that is understood, that's important and that's a priority. But past that, we saw the everything from media day, all the preseason polls, and we saw that Tyrese Hunter and PJ Haggerty were both preseason first team All AAC. And so to me, it's let's see how they work together. How do Tyrese Hunter and PJ Haggerty meld together in the backcourt? So basically taking that big topic of chemistry all the way around and shrinking it down to those two guys, because the backcourt is going to be extremely important for this team. What does the dynamic look like? Obviously, I think the expectation is PJ Haggerty's the first option. Tyrese Hunter kind of more the point guard, facilitator, move the ball, pick and choose when he makes baskets. But let's see it in live action. Let's see what that looks like. Let's see what the last few months of work have built for those two and how their dynamic works in the backcourt. Because if Tyrese Hunter and PJ Haggerty are as good as advertised and work as well together as they seemingly do on paper, then Memphis should have the best backcourt in the conference, and they could have one of the better ones in the country. Although it's not, massive name value. These are two extremely solid players. Tyrese Hunter was great at Texas. We know what PJ Haggerty did in his freshman season. So if they work together, like you're saying, if PJ Haggerty is able to lift his three-point shooting up a little bit, this could be a very special backcourt for Memphis.
Yeah, and if you look at the preseason all-conference teams, they were both first team, so
Yep.
that makes a whole lot of sense. The only guy that was on the second team was Colby Rogers. I think Dainja, that's somebody they need to pay attention to. They should have paid attention to. He was a guy who had a lot of other offers, and he ended up at the University of Memphis. So I feel like there's a good relationship there, and I feel like they're going to use him to the best of his abilities. And I don't know if there's a bunch of bigs around the conference that really scare anybody by any stretch of the imagination. I thought that he probably should have gotten that nod. Now, let's talk about the preseason AAC poll. The Tigers were picked second, and in first, UAB. And UAB made the tournament last year as a 12 seed, played really close in the 5-12 matchup against San Diego State. I think it was 69-65. They can play some good defense. They're bringing back Yaxel Lindeborg, who was picked to be the AAC preseason player of the year. Christian Coleman is a solid forward that they're bringing back. We know Andy Kennedy has been pretty good as a program runner and a program builder. And he's been pretty consistent with that program over the past, 5-6 years. So you give him a lot of credit for that. But what do you make of the Tigers, who seemingly have a boatload more talent that they brought in through the transfer portal, getting picked second? Like when you look around the country, or all the country and the metrics and everything else, Tigers are the only team from the AAC listed in most bracketologies. They're the team that's listed 32 in Bart Torvik and 43 in Ken Palm, ahead of all of the other AAC schools that they're going to be facing in conference this year. What do you make about the American Athletic Conference coaches who voted on this, putting UAB over them?
Sounds like prove it to me.
Yep.
And I think it's fair. And Memphis was picked to finish second last year behind FAU, and actually had more first place votes this year than last year. And if you looked at that team on paper, even with what FAU had just done, we talked about this. I can't tell you how many times we talked about this. Yes, FAU had all the shine from the Final Four run that they had in 2022, but Memphis was the better team on paper with all these players coming in through the transfer portal, and they flopped for the most part, especially the second half of the season. And so to me, that's what it feels like, is prove it. Andy Kennedy, they're saying Andy Kennedy has done more with less talent, and now he's bringing back who's supposed to be the best player in the conference with a solid core around him. And there's more coming back. There's more continuity on this UAB team than there is at Memphis. And so to me, it's 100% saying prove it. That, yes, we believe that Memphis can do it. And I would say most coaches, if you ask them, would say they probably should do it based on talent, but they've been burned too many times.
Yep.
If you were to pick Memphis first in this conference, you would have been burned multiple times. And so I think that's what it is yes, they're a good team. Some people will give them some first place votes, but the rest, prove it. And then give you respect moving forward.
I mean, brother, here's the truth. From a talent perspective, I think this Memphis team's top 35 in the country. I think that 32, ranking and Bart Torvik is pretty accurate from a talent perspective. I also think it fits better than it did a year ago, even though you had more big name talent, higher name talent, higher paid talent. But I just think it fits better. This defensive identity is going to return. Offensively, they're going to have to pick up the pieces and figure out where everybody fits. But I have confidence they have enough on the offensive side to go make that happen. But in the end of the day, like we've seen year after year after year, this be the most talented team in the American Athletic Conference, and they've yet to win it. A regular season title.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like at the end of the day, I completely understand the sentiment, especially from the coaches in this conference. They've been coaching against Penny. They've won a lot of games against Penny.
Yeah.
And when we look at UAB a year ago, they split those games 1-1. And if it weren't for 60-26 in the second half, in one of those games against UAB, Memphis would have lost 2 to them because they were down 17 at freaking halftime. So I mean, we've seen Andy Kennedy, get the better of Penny Hardaway in the past. So I completely understand this. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. But I'll say this. I don't expect UAB to finish ahead of Memphis in the conference this year. I know that it's hard, like for a lot of people to say that with confidence. But based on what I'm hearing, based on what I have seen, based on the way you can always sort of tell the way Penny Hardaway's carrying himself.
Yeah.
If he likes the team, if he's confident in the team. And it feels like everything we've seen this offseason, he seems pretty confident in his own skin, and with this collection of talent he brought in. I just think he feels like they fit better. He's not having all the personality issues, and I think that is most of the battle. Yeah. Right? Because last year, if you didn't have those personality issues, if they jived a little bit better, if they were better teammates, I think everything would have gone a whole lot differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not disagree with any of that. Do you have any more basketball notes? Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I do. So the AP Top 25 came out, and no surprise really in the top 5, Kansas 1, Alabama 2, UConn 3, who the Tigers are going to play this year at the Maui Invitational, their first game. Houston 4, Iowa State 5. Then it's Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, North Carolina, Arizona. Tigers got 0 votes in the AP Top 25. And the Tigers play 4 teams, either in the preseason or the regular season, that are ranked. North Carolina, Alabama in the exhibitions. Then they'll have UConn and Ole Miss. And we'll see how the rest of this stuff plays out, because you're still going to have Clemson, Mississippi State, UAB got votes. All 3 of those teams got votes. So those teams could rise up into the top 25 as the season goes along. But I'm glad that is the case, right? I know some people are like, okay, that's a lot of talent. They're going to have to really manage themselves in the out of conference, but they also have to gain notoriety and national, respect in those matchups, because I was looking at the KenPom rankings that were posted over the weekend, as Ken Pomeroy did his first poll of the year, and Memphis is 43rd, which, okay, deal with that.
Fine.
The next teams right there from 81 to 101, North Texas 81, UAB 84, Wichita State 100, FAU 101, and then all the way at the bottom, you go all the way down to 234, you find Rice. So this conference schedule,
bad,
and where we thought these teams would be is exactly where they're at. They are bad. Not thought of highly. They're very bad, and I don't know if they have a bunch of ground that they can make up to really put themselves into that top 60, top 50 range.
Yeah, it's the same old song and dance, right? Like, you have to take care of business in conference, obviously, because the lack of top end teams, and then the out of conference schedule becomes even more important. It's the same things that we were saying going into last year, looking at all the ranked games, looking at all the potential quality wins. It's why tournaments like the Maui Invitational are so important for Memphis. You got it. I don't want to say you have to, but you really need to go pick up 2 or 3 wins at least. You can't get blanked in a tournament like that. It's going to be absolutely terrible for anything as far as postseason basketball goes. So it really is. It's the same thing as last year. Look, you're going to play some good teams at a conference. You have to make them count. You cannot waste those opportunities. It's why we've been talking about the importance of the chemistry, how they look in this North Carolina exhibition, how they look in the Alabama exhibition. You get to see 2 top 10 teams before you even start regular season play, and kind of stack yourself up, see your weaknesses, see your strengths, and see what you have to work on going into out of conference play, because the margin for error is so thin. You just don't have much to work with when you're playing teams that are 100 plus in the country, because you're not getting anything for that. It is the difference that you receive between winning that game and losing that game is absolutely massive. You lose games like that, you're looked at as a fraud. You win games like that, you do what you're supposed to do. So 100%. That's really where they stand as far as the in conference and out of conference schedule. It's you got a pretty decent gauntlet. You got a chance for quality wins. It's why we talked about the importance opposed to right before the season started, because you have to be hitting from night 1 of the regular season to have a good outlook going into the postseason.
Yeah, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record when I say it, but buddy, think about where this conference was basketball-wise like 3 years ago.
Right.
Like, just think about it. UCF, Cincinnati clicking, Houston, top 5 team in the country. Yep. SMU had some moments under Jankovic. I know it ended badly, but they were solid for a couple years. now it's a 1 bid league. Like there were some years in the AAC, you could talk about them. You could talk yourself into them being 3-4 bid league.
Yep.
And really proving themselves in the out of conference. Now it's just like, this is a 1 big bid league unless UAB surprises somebody this year. That's where we're at. You get an automatic qualifier for the most part. Then outside of that, everybody else seems SOL.
Yeah. To get
unless you're Memphis. Memphis is the one team in this conference that I think really has that opportunity to be a at large, even if they don't win the tournament. But nobody else has that opportunity really.
Yeah, just based off the schedules and that. Yeah, exactly. So the only way this conference really gets to is UAB surprises somebody or another team surprises
somebody upsets Memphis in the American Athletic Conference tournament, and Memphis is still
has
solidly in the field.
They lose 3 or 4 games the whole year, and then another team wins the conference tournament. That is the only way. It's rough, but it is what it is, and so you have to do what you have to do at a conference. You have to take care of business. You have to be clicking early, and it's scary because that's a gamble. It takes teams time to get in rhythm. It's not going to be perfect from night one, but you have to be dang near, especially with, Maui Invitational, ranked opponents, quad 1 opportunities. Like, you have to be ready to roll.
Yeah. Can I ask you this question?
Yeah.
Outside of the sort of the big 4 we're looking at, right, where it's Dain, Dainja, PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, Colby Rogers, like who that's part of the rotation, part of that bench grouping, do you really expect to like step up and be a night to night? I think Nick Jourdain, I guess you could group in with those starters because he's had some consistency, but not near enough. I didn't see near enough from him last year to really like hang my hat on him being a very productive player this year. But like, who else? Because we know that Penny wants to run 9 guys out there.
Yeah, I mean, you said Nick Jourdain. I think that's a solid one because I think he's one of those glue rotational guys that needs to play well. But I think Tyreek Smith is another big name.
Tyreek Smith, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's been productive in the past at SMU. He's been a solid player. But it's like Memphis is going to be looking for another big to step up. I think that's why they added so many. You got Dainja, you got Musa Cisse, you got Tyreek Smith. They added a lot of these quality big men, and it's like who wants these minutes and who's going to take advantage of them? We expect Dainja to, and it's like, okay, if he's going to be the guy, if he's going to be the front court centerpiece, just to kind of relate it to the back court, let's say PJ Haggerty is the superstar, you have a perfect running mate in Tyrese Hunter or Colby Rogers. So who's going to be that for Dainja? Who's going to be the Robin? Who's going to be the secondary option in the front court? Obviously, Musa Cisse, that the defense is there, but can Tyreek Smith, be a similar or better scoring option than he's been in the past? I think he was around 8 or 9 points per game at SMU. Can he do that at Memphis, or can he exceed that at Memphis? Can Nick Jourdain take a step and be more than a 3 to 5 point per game guy? Can his role expand to where he can be an 8 to 9 point per game guy? So I think Tyreek Smith would be my best educated guess, but it's the door's wide open, especially in the front court.
And I think Baraka Okogie, we've seen some more positive trending news on him and his injury. So it looks like he's going to get cleared here relatively soon. That's a guy that I expect big things. I'll tell you my sleeper though. I think PJ Carter can provide a fair amount for this team if everything goes, relatively smoothly. I mean, he was 40% from 3 on 4 threes per game a year ago at UTSA. And I think he's one of their bigger pieces in the backcourt. He's 6'5".
Yeah, that's what I was
I think there's a little bit.
They use him at the 3.
There's a little bit more positional versatility to where he can get on the floor a little bit more. Like he's the sleeper that I'm going to be watching for to maybe have a bigger year than we expect.
Yeah, I agree with you there. All right, Gabe, let's transition to a little bit of Memphis football. They were back in action, and it wasn't pretty once again, but it was another win and pull off a 21-3 win over South Florida. They cover. Those two things would make you think.
Cover. Shit,
those two things would make you think impressive. You would think, okay, that went well. Defensively, great. They played a great game. They held South Florida 3 points. They outscored South Florida with the late touchdown from Chandler Martin on the fumble recovery. offensively, they start out hot, 2 touchdown drives in the first quarter. They get a decently long touchdown pass to Dainja Blankenship, and you're thinking, okay, are they finally about to blow this open? Is this going to be the offense that we expected? And then it literally downshifted into neutral for the rest of the game, and they did not score another offensive touchdown after the first quarter. And it continues to concern the heck out of me.
I don't know what to say at this point, man.
I don't either.
Because something stinks to high heaven with this passing offense. Because it can't just be every game, oh, we're getting bracketed. They're really focusing on our pass. I'm sure they did that the back half of last year, and you're still lighting up the scoreboard and lighting up
where
was
South Florida? Wasn't South Florida way low in pass defense?
Yeah, they were 133rd out of 134. They gave up 335 yards per game passing, and you only mustered up 208. And the second half was just like you were dead. There was no urgency. There was nothing to it. You just played the field position game the whole second half, and maybe you felt confident with that. But I think you need to, as an offense, I can tell you this, even in games like that where you can win defensively, which I was not in a lot of those in college. My defenses were not very good. But when you're in games like that, you still want to boost your offense's confidence. You want to build something. You want to get some practice reps. Even if you think you're going to win 14 or 21-3, keep the foot on the gas to let them build something. Understand what's expected of them. It feels like they've, as a coaching staff and as an offense, kind of dropped the ball on that. And it's very frustrating. I thought that they picked up, they even had a bye week in between Middle Tennessee and this game, and it felt like it was the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like almost copy and paste, same exact performance. And I will say this, the one positive thing you can take is, okay, you have 5 more games this year and 6 more games this year, and you feel confident about winning your next 5. North Texas at home, Charlotte at home, at UTSA, who's been horrid this year, Rice, UAB at home. 4 your next 5 are at home before you get to Tulane. You could be 10-1. You should be 10-1 by the time you play on the road at Tulane for a night game on Thanksgiving. That's positive, but all the performances we've seen, since that Navy loss, the 2 performances they're not giving me confidence. And I fear that this offense has lost a fair amount of confidence. At this point in the season, I don't know. Like Seth Hennigan, 9 TDs to 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
Through 6 games?
6 games, yeah.
I expected a shitload more, if I'm being honest. And you could sit there and say they're defending us a certain way, all you want, but you have to make adjustments on the fly. You have to understand the adjustments another team can make and how they're going to defend you, and then you have to then put your offense in a better position. It just doesn't feel like that's all come together.
Yeah, It feels like right now with Memphis's offense, the only way they open it up is if they're in a shootout. And we don't have a ton of evidence for that, but the one piece of evidence we do have is the Navy game, which we talked about last week. It was the best the offense looked. It's the one game they lost. It's the one game the defense absolutely fell apart. And so it feels like the coaching staff is okay with just downshifting in the neutral, like you said, playing the field position game and not worrying about scoring points. A win's a win. 18-point win against a conference opponent is fine, but it's optically. And like you said, being a part of teams where you didn't have many opportunities to do so, but you'd have to feel like your coaching staff doesn't trust you if you're 14 points in the first quarter, you're rolling. They can't really do anything to stop you, and then it just becomes fully conservative. Let's kill clock, play time of possession, and win this ball game.
It's like with that, it would be, okay, do I trust my quarterback and my wide receivers and my O-line? Well, you should. Your O-line has how many starts? I think, combined probably over 100 starts at this point.
Yeah.
When you look at or no, it's not 100.
It was like 50. It was like 55, I think.
It's still a lot of starts.
Or maybe more.
And then you look at you have a 4th-year quarterback, 4th-year starter in Seth Hennigan, 4th-year player or 5th-year player in Rock Taylor.
Yep.
4th-year guy in Dainja Blankenship, 4th-year guy in Kobe Drake. Anthony Landfear's a JUCO guy who's been playing college football for a long time. It's like usually you'd go conservative because you're scared that your team's going to make a mistake offensively and let the other team back in. Like I see it with, Josh Heupel at Tennessee. I've been very critical of him because he downshifts it a little bit too much. But he has an excuse. I have a freshman quarterback who's only started 6 games.
Right.
This team should this coaching staff should not be worried
scared to open it up
about this offense making mistakes, even though they're up in a game.
No,
they shouldn't be. Like there's no excuse for that.
Yeah, that's what's so confusing is if it was a young quarterback, if it was a young O-line, if it was this is a full veteran group like you just laid out.
I would shoot you bail. If you had a bunch of freshmen out there still getting used to playing college football, I'll shoot you a little bail.
Right.
Not this group.
No.
This group is a 1-year mercenary group right here for one more year. Then you're going to have to completely rebuild the program.
Yes.
And get different players in there.
Yeah.
You should not be holding a damn thing back with these guys this late into the season. I mean, we're 6 games into the season. You should be holding a damn thing back.
No, this team should be built for blowouts, honestly. If the defense is going to play like this and you have the experience and the production.
Go in 51-3, 56-3.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And we talked about this earlier in the year. Yes, a win is a win. A conference win is good. It can get you into the conference championship if you continue winning them. But it's going to take more than that. There's one bid. There's one bid. And you look around and you see what some of these other teams are doing. They're doing it with style points.
Have to. I agree. Like down the stretch of the season, they should be focusing on style points to a certain extent.
Yeah. And
if you want to get your name back out there nationally, get your name back into that sort of college football playoff conversation, which, again, people have put on the back burner. But, like, it's still – theoretically possible.
Correct.
You still have to get out there and put some style points out there. Have your point differential look nuts.
Yeah.
Like just do what people expected of you, you know? Right. It's just this is underwhelming. There's no doubt.
Yeah. No, I mean, realistically, Memphis could roll through the rest of the season, win every game, win the conference championship. Boise State could still make it over them, even if they lost another game and had 2 losses. Because they're nationally ranked. Everybody in the country is talking about them because of Ashton Jeanty. Memphis doesn't have that. They're not racking up any style points. They're just winning ugly ball games, which winning is winning. I'm not taking that away. This is more for if you're going to go do something special, outlook. I know that's very far-fetched now, but if you're going to do anything like that, and that's the goal still for the team, then you got to impress some people. You can't just be a conservative offense.
Generate some buzz. Get people enthused. You know what I mean? I thought this week would be that week because South Florida's secondary is terrible and Byron Brown was banged up, but no, 21-3.
And no
offensive points in the second half.
It would be one thing if we didn't see it, but the 14 points that they scored in this game were in the first quarter.
Yeah.
So it was there. It was on the table. It was for the taking, and they did not take it. They didn't take advantage of it. They just cruised to a win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what did you think of Mario Anderson Jr. spitting in a guy's face?
I thought that was probably not the best thing to do.
They're not going to suspend him, by the way. And I agree with the decision making here. Because here's the thing: by all accounts, I want people to understand this. Mario Anderson Jr. is a good kid. He's a good dude. And that is so far outside his character. And Ryan said it today at his press conference. Ryan said it at his press conference. Like he said he was very, he was sorry. Right. Felt sorry for what he had done once he was in the locker room and got ejected. So like suspending him for a game, I guess you could try to teach him that lesson, but he doesn't have that much more college football to play. And I don't think something like this is going to happen. I think he'll learn from that and move on. And also, what is up? Like, it feels like a lot of guys are emboldened. We had Trayshawn Holden from Oregon spit in the Ohio State player's face, Ohio State DB's face. Like last week, what was it? Dylan Stewart from South Carolina, sacking Jackson Dart and then shooting a shotgun at him a bunch of times. Like, guys are just acting wild, man. What's up?
What about Kirby Smart shoving Michael Van
Buren? What's going on, man? People need to control their damn emotions a little bit.
Yep. Wild times. Gabe, any other thoughts before we get to the hot 3?
No, sir. Let's get to it.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Be back on the other side with Kenny Stubblefield in the Hot 3.
I think Zach Edey played well. He got his fouls in. He got them in for sure. But we saw some flashes of really what he can do. Whether that's setting screens or just whether blocking shots or just making guys change their mind about shots or just affecting the quality of shots that guys were getting in the game. We saw that a lot. They gotta use him though, man. They gotta be able to find him a little bit.
I was about to say they especially the whole first quarter. It was like because I think that lob that y'all had him, that was his first points of the game. So it was like the whole first quarter. I did peep that. It was like I see everybody else attempting 5+ shots.
Right.
Y'all got to find a way to give Zach Edey something like at some point. Everything was running well last night, right? The offense was flowing well. It's gonna come a stretch of time where they're gonna be stagnant, and at that time, that's when I expect them. Okay, hey, let's run the post play to Zach Edey.
Tune in to the Anthony Sane Show Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
This is a question I don't know if you've ever been asked. Was there anyone you ever wanted to dunk on?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm glad you haven't getting a big kick out of that one. I'm glad you've been waiting all day for that. Just waiting all day to get that little jokey joke in. Oh, you got a joke. But yeah, I always wanted to dunk in the game. That's what I wanted to do. And it didn't have to be on anybody. And I wanted it to be off of a missed shot, like on an offensive rebound, so that everyone's around or in the vicinity when it happened.
Did you ever dunk in practice and get overly excited?
Yes. and everybody be like, well, are you going to do it in a game? And I'm like, no.
Tune in to the Night Court podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. What up, boys?
What's happening, Kenny Stubblefield?
Go.
Didn't get Kenny
Come on
last
down.
week, Dave.
It's time, baby. I'm back from a little beach vacation with the family. Can I just be honest with you, man? It was like the most boring beach vacation.
Don't.
Should I not? I should stop.
You shouldn't.
He's complaining about vacation.
You shouldn't say that. I don't think you should say that.
Well, it was just the water was too cold. There was flies on the beach that were biting flies that like bit my ankles and made them bleed. Like it was just crazy. I'm glad
you did a lot of work when you were there, by the way. Too.
I did do a lot of work when I was there. That's true.
Yeah, that's probably part of it.
Yeah.
As we're sitting here, though, are you tracking this Grizzlies preseason game?
Yeah.
Against the Pacers?
I was gonna ask y'all: have we just like completely overthought? Like, has the NBA just overanalyzed, overthought Zach Edey?
Yeah,
like,
I think
Jesus Christ, man.
Well, it made me laugh. Who was it? It was Amin El Hassan and Gutierrez, Israel Gutierrez.
Israel Gutierrez, yeah.
They're like, I don't think he's going to fit in the NBA. And then they proceeded to compare him to Karl Anthony Towns and Embiid and Jokic. I was like, nobody's ever asked him to be that, homie. Like, right. that's not who we expect him to be. But so far tonight, I sit here 7:56 p.m. on Monday. 23-9-1 with a steal. He's a +9 in 18 minutes.
Not too shabby.
And he's playing against Miles Turner and Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, some guys that have been in the league for a little bit.
He has turned Miles Turner out to this game. Like, he's made him look. Miles Turner is like Olympian, played on the United States men's national team, has led the league in shot blocks like 2 years running. Like, I mean, just an incredible player. And Zach is just go sit down. Go sit down. Go sit down.
Like, he's dogging his ass tonight.
Yeah, it's wild.
More of that though once we get into the regular season.
I'm excited, and Anthony said it in the show in the commercial that we played during the break. They just got to get on the ball, right? Like figure out how to get a 7'5" big man who can, seal off in the paint. Get on the ball.
It needs to be like that should not be your first, second, third option. I think you should.
I don't think
get it to him in moderation. You have John, Dez, and Jaron.
No, I agree. I think it is hilarious to me, and we'll get to the hot three in a second, but it is hilarious to me how quickly Memphis fans, and maybe just fans in general, just turn when they see one thing that they don't like, how it just the snowball effect into just dissecting the entire franchise, the entire roster, and what I'm like, guys, like this. Number one, it's the preseason
their legacy,
Oh man,
their legacy.
Folks calling for Taylor Jenkins' job during this during 2 preseason games, one of them or 3 preseason games, 2 of them which they've won. Like it's just kind of like, come on, man.
How does Kenny Stubblefield missing a couple of hot threes in a row because of vacation affect his legacy?
Oh, it deeply impacts my legacy. Absolutely,
big time.
Not even a big time effect. But y'all ready to get to the hot three?
Of course.
Do it.
Let's do this thing, man. NFL Week 6 happened. We had some coaches getting fired. We had some big time points scored this year. Just a lot of interesting games, man. What stuck out to y'all and what you saw? Let's speak on the Robert Saleh stuff with the Jets. Were you at all surprised by the New York Jets firing Robert Saleh?
No, but it does bother me that even after it happened, Aaron Rodgers is taking no responsibility for it. And I'll say this. I don't think in any way Aaron Rodgers went to Woody Johnson, the owner for the Jets, and said, fire this guy. But indirectly, Aaron Rodgers is the reason that Robert Saleh is out of a job right now.
Yeah. Clock's ticking.
He skips mandatory minicamp. But I'm back. Where did I leave off? Let me know.
You got it. Mandatory. He skips mandatory minicamp. Yep.
Yeah, he skips mandatory minicamp. Does all that. You can tell he doesn't have quite the control that he should over that Jets team. Nathaniel Hackett, because he sucks as an OC. Robert Saleh was thinking about firing him, and Woody Johnson ended up choosing Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett being Aaron Rodgers' yes man over Robert Saleh. I think indirectly, Aaron Rodgers is to blame for this. Now, I don't think Robert Saleh is some unbelievable coach. He was 20-36 as the Jets head coach. So I don't think he had that much time left unless things started turning. Right. But to do it 5 games into a season before a Monday night matchup where you could take the outright lead in the AFC East, I thought that was it was goofy. It was very goofy, especially when you consider Robert Saleh, since he took over in 2021, was like first in EPA per play, first in yards per game, defensive yards per game, I think third in scoring defense, and he's a defensive head coach. He held up his end of the bargain defensively. It's just the offense spiraled out of control on him.
Right. Speaking of coaches, Gabe, let's talk about Nick Sirianni and how big of a clown he is.
Set the stage. Let the people know what happened.
So the Philadelphia Eagles played the hapless Cleveland Browns.
They're the worst team in the NFL, right?
Panthers, Pats, but
there's competition.
Their quarterback situation's the worst in the NFL. I don't think it's close with Deshaun Watson.
As far as talent compared to on the field product, yes, I would say they are the worst team in the league. But the Eagles had been without A.J. Brown since week 1. Devontae Smith missed a week with a concussion. They're coming off of a bye week, and they play the Cleveland Browns, and they win 20-16. It was an ugly game. They couldn't get much going offensively. They had a couple of big plays to A.J. Brown and a big play to Devontae Smith. Outside of that, not much at all. Nick Sirianni was getting dogged by fans, as he has been pretty much all year, and really since the end of last season when the Eagles absolutely fell apart down the stretch. And then he goes to the fans after the game and starts talking crap.
Eagles fans, just to be clear. His own fans.
Eagles fans, his team's fans, starts talking crap to them. And then what some people said was even funnier afterward. I think I heard Damian Woody talking about this on ESPN this morning. Was talking about then he proceeds to bring his kids into the press conference, seemingly to kind of soften the blow with the media. So he's a clown. He is an absolute clown. I agree with Damian Woody on that. And he's been terrible since the first 10 games of last year. And the reports all off season about the framework of this team were falling apart, the culture were falling apart. Hurts and Sirianni were not on the same page and were not fans of each other, and their relationship had deteriorated. It's not pretty in Philly.
You really, after Sirianni, after a 20-16 win over the 1-5 Browns at home, you want to act as if your fans should be happy with your performance?
Right.
You hit them with the Coach Prime. You believe now? No, that's not the time to do it, brother. And he was hitting them with these, I can't hear you, not loud enough. Dude, get over yourself. And I honestly, Jalen Hurts has been saying it without saying it that he doesn't like the guy. He's been saying it even in the pressers. He's not even hiding it.
No.
I think it was going into the bye week. He was basically asked, are you and Nick Sirianni going to be on the same page? And his answer was so weird. He said, we have our moments. It's like, well, that's pretty telling. That's
that is not.
Answer. It's a strange answer.
There's so much being said there that's not being said. Right?
Yes, but I get why Jalen Hurts seemingly doesn't like the guy. Because Jalen Hurts, every time they play on Sunday, has to be the grown-up.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with a 40-some-odd-year-old child.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be the guy that's, having all this energy, and I'm supposed to be the guy that needs to be calmed down in these moments. But Jalen Hurts has to finds himself calming down his own coach every damn Sunday.
Yeah. All right. Okay, let's close out the NFL talk with a topic that's not going to be very fun for me to talk about, but we'll go there because we're kind
most
of
telling game of the weekend, by the way.
Yeah,
wow.
We're kind of on a coaching discussion right now, and the Cowboys are coming off the heels of a 47-9 loss against the Detroit Lions, a team that they beat last year in a 1-point.
Well, it was kind of strange there at the end with did they check in? Did they not?
Who cares?
Either way, they won.
It was competitive. Even if Detroit would have won that game, it was competitive. These are largely two of the two same rosters that these teams had last year, and this was a 38-point game. Mike McCarthy's won 12 games in each of the last 3 seasons. This year, the Cowboys haven't looked great so far, and he brings in, they bring in Mike Zimmer off the streets, who was I think was in Colorado, right?
He was in Colorado, but he was the fired Vikings coach.
Yeah, and his defense has been horrendously bad this year outside of Week 1 against the aforementioned terrible Cleveland Browns. I don't know what you think, but I think it's time to blow it up.
I think they should have already fired him if they were going to fire him. But here's my thing: I cannot sit here and simply just talk about coaching. They're a problem. Don't get it twisted. They do not have a good coaching staff. But I think we'd be doing a disservice to our listeners if we didn't talk about the front office and their lack of spending this offseason. 100%. Being 32 of 32, they only spent $20 million this offseason in money. They were dead last in free agent spending in 2024. And that's the reason you end up in a situation where, the defense is bad, but they're also injured to no end. Sam Williams gets hurt before the year. Micah Parsons has been out. Tank Lawrence is on IR. Marshawn Nealon ends up on IR. Deron Bland's been hurt. Eric Kendricks is now hurt. And you don't have anybody behind them that's worth their salt to play an NFL game. And then also, I don't think they addressed the O-line in any meaningful way. I think they just sort of rested on their laurels. Their O-line is bad, Christian. Yeah. It's horrible. I know I have been sort of anti-PFF grades, but I'm going to go ahead and reference a PFF grade here. Even your supposed stalwart, like your guy that ties everything together up front, Zach Martin, who's been an all-pro, 7-8 times at this point? Yeah. He's been bad. In that game against the Lions, that 47-9 loss, he had a 0% pass pro grade, according to PFF. 0%. Aleem McNeil, who's not even known as some unbelievable pass rusher, was killing him in one-on-ones all night. I don't know if he's hurt or if he's just at the end of the line, but he seems like he's not cut out for this league for much longer. Zach Martin, a guy that you've just loved on for all these years. And when you just look at the PFF grades across the board, Tyler Guyton, 49.7%, 71 out of 78 O tackles. Tyler Smith is your best one by far, 75.5% at left guard, 10 out of 73. But then Cooper Beebe's 29 of 35 qualifying centers. Zach Martin is 24 of 73 offensive guards, which is crazy for him because he's been one on multiple occasions, according to the same exact site, Pro Football Focus. And then at right tackle, Terrence Steele has been bad. He has a 63% grade all year. That's 46th for right tackles.
He is absolutely terrible.
So, I mean, and you don't have a running back that's any good.
And then you
don't have a redeeming quality right now. And you lost the turnover battle 5-0. It just they are aggressively average as an NFL football team. Aggressively average.
And then you look at
they didn't do anything. They didn't make any meaningful changes this offseason that they had the opportunity to make.
No, and then you look at the Baltimore Ravens, what they're doing. Derrick Henry, who they're paying $9 million, has 705 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. He is on pace for career high touchdowns, career high yards per carry, second most scrimmage yards in his career, and third most attempts in a season for his career at age 30 that the Dallas Cowboys, quote unquote, did not have enough money for. Trash.
That's the biggest bullshit ever. They have plenty of money.
Yeah,
I'm sick of that. Oh, we didn't have enough money. No, brother, you're worth what? $10 billion as a franchise? Shut up. Like the positions you needed to, Christian, what makes this even worse, the positions you needed to attack in free agency, you needed interior D linemen and running backs. The cheapest pound for pound positions to afford. And you're saying you don't have enough money to afford those guys, those free agents? Get out of here. That's a terrible excuse.
Yep. If I was them, I would fire Mike McCarthy. Wipe the slate clean.
But here's my thing: if you want like meaningful championship level changes, you got to talk about the front office, GMs, player personnel people, because it's gone on for too long. Joneses need to. I see, and the thing is, I don't even know if Stephen Jones is bad because I know Jerry's still pulling strings.
Right.
Like I can't even really give Stephen Jones a grade.
Yeah.
I think it's incomplete until I see him operating as an independent, as an individual.
Yeah. I'm totally on board. Turn it all over to Will McClay. Bring Ben Johnson in as head coach. That's my fix for this. But anyway, Kenny, before I start crying, let's go to topic number 2.
I don't want Christian to cry. Let's move on. College football week 7 recap. Tons of really fun games. Obviously, it started off on Friday night with Memphis' own Kenny Dillingham and the Arizona State beating Utah, top 16 team in the country, beating them pretty badly. And then, man, game of the week, Ohio State, Oregon. You had LSU, Ole Miss. You had Tennessee, and who did Tennessee play again? Florida. You had Georgia, Mississippi. Just a lot of fun games. What were y'all's? Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about with that.
Gabe, I'm really gonna have to turn this over to you because, like I said, I really was not able to watch.
Well, I just want to point something out about the two guys that won games that were on that first Norvell staff here in Memphis, Kenny Dillingham and Dain. I've been sort of banging this drum, but I hope people are starting to see what I'm saying. They are young enough and sort of moldable enough to be the coaches that we talk about going into the future with. They know how to excite their fan base. They don't necessarily try to hide all of their emotions. You saw both of them just raging on the field with the fans on the field storming. Like those two guys in particular give me a lot of hope for the future of college football coaching because I think they relate to their players really well. They show their emotions, and I think that all sort of works out in this new day and age of college football and how we play it and how we recruit it and all that. But I just
let me ask you this, Gabe, real quick. Who are you? So having known both of those guys in particular, are you surprised by their success? I mean, did you Kenny Dillingham, I think Dan Lanning we knew was moving towards that goal of being a head coach. Did we know that about Kenny Dillingham and that he would probably have the success that he's having?
I didn't expect him to get the Arizona State job, but I think when they got rid of Herm Edwards, like he was kind of a easy option. He wanted to have, that's his dream job. So they're like, yeah, let's go after this guy. He's been an OC at some really, with Auburn and Gus Malzahn and with Norvell, and he's been around the block. So let's take our opportunity. He's young. He can grow into the job. I didn't necessarily expect him to get a Power 5 job with his first gig, but I always thought both those guys were going to have success because, like, I can tell you behind closed doors, the ability they have to lead while still being your friend, while still holding you accountable. I think there's very few people in the country that can do that because they're not so far removed from their, college football days. They still can relate to the player nowadays and still, run a clean program while allowing players to have freedom. And I think they're guys you want to play for in the end of the day. And I think that with some of these older coaches, you see some players not play as hard for them because they don't necessarily want to, they don't necessarily bring that same reaction out of these new 18 to 22-year-olds. But I always thought both those guys were going to have success in their coaching careers.
Well, I didn't know Dan Lanning the way that a lot of the guys that have covered this team, the Memphis team, knew him. I mean, there are guys that talk about covering this team that, would play golf and drink beers with Dan Lanning, that kind of stuff. Like they enjoyed their time with him. But did you see the piece that ESPN did?
Yeah. I remember, him and his wife. His wife had
that
cancer.
Was incredible, man.
Really, really, very well done.
You know what's striking? Like, we knew about it. Like, we all knew about it. Coach Norvell talked to the team about it and told us to support him and do all that. But even when he was at his lowest, you never knew it.
Yeah, it's
ever.
wild.
Like, there was never a day off, never an hour off. If you needed something, you could text him. Always very responsive, even at that time when he had all that going on. Because I think he sort of had to be a figure of strength within the program and a figure of strength at home. And I've always respected him for, how he still conducted himself with class through that moment. Because he's better than I am.
Yeah.
Lord knows something like that happens to me, I'll be a shell of myself. And he never was that. And I think that's a testament to him and his character.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of weeks off from the podcast if something like that were to happen.
Yeah, for sure. But that game in itself, man, hell of a win for Dan. Hell of a win.
Oh, my God.
And they finally woke up as a program. Like, Oregon actually showed what they could have been and should have been through the first 6 games of the season. We thought they were going to have this great offensive skill group, and they finally showed it. Dylan Gabriel was phenomenal, didn't make a mistake with the football. They had 0 turnovers. He had 341 yards, 2 TDs. I asked last week because we've seen Tez Johnson pretty well, Terrence Ferguson, their tight end, play pretty well. Trayshawn Holden's had his moments, but there's a guy named Evan Stewart who is a transfer from A&M, who I think is an NFL draft. I think he'll be playing on Sundays, but he hadn't done anything. He hadn't done anything. And as soon as I say that, here comes Evan Stewart out of the woodwork, 7 catches, 149 yards, and a TD. This is my hope, that they take this and they've learned something from it and they can carry it out through the rest of the year. But here's the problem I have with that line of thinking. You do have to turn around on a Friday night, go to West Lafayette and play Purdue. That's your big gift for winning this Ohio State game. So I think we'll see what their response is like coming up on Friday. But they finally showed us who we thought they were going to be in the preseason. And I think that's a positive you take away if you're Oregon.
Yeah, no, that game was incredible. Let me ask you this. So obviously the AP Top 25 has come out. You've got Texas back in at number 1, Oregon number 2, Penn State number 3, 4 Ohio State, 5 Georgia. Were you guys at all? I know Gabe probably saw the game a little bit. Christian probably didn't, but were y'all surprised by Georgia's? I mean, Carson Beck threw for 459 yards in this game against Mississippi State, and they only won by 10 against Mississippi State.
He threw 3 picks, didn't he?
Oh, did he throw that many picks? I didn't see that.
2 picks.
Two
But
picks.
yeah. But the other part of that is like, I'm starting to. Can I ask this question to both of you guys?
Yeah.
Is the off the field stuff starting to affect them a little bit on the field?
How can it not?
Like seeing the way that Kirby Smart came unglued and pushed the Mississippi State player. You're just like, they're not controlling their emotions in a very positive way. They're not playing really good ball this year. I don't know. Like, eventually, all that nonsense off the field catches up with you. We saw it with Urban Meyer at Florida. And that question has started to, get into my head, and I'm asking myself that every time I watch them.
There is just something going on there. Like, there's something that's happening there. So many guys are getting in trouble with the law off the field that it's just like
they had the Colby Young thing this week where the allegation, the allegation is assault of an unborn child. Like, good God, man.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying like Kirby is, to blame for these guys getting in trouble, but also he hasn't put himself in a great position not to be the one that takes the blame, because he hasn't really punished these guys the way they're supposed to be punished. He sort of lets it fly because they've been winning. And I think Georgia fans are going to get sick of it if they take another loss. They're playing Texas this weekend. Takes another loss to Texas, put yourself in a bad position in the college football playoff, buddy. That Georgia fan base starts to get pretty.
Fan bases are willing to overlook a lot of stuff when you're winning a lot of games, but when you start losing and that shit keeps happening, it's like, come on, man. The juice isn't worth the squeeze,
One more take for the weekend. Colorado played at home against Kansas State, number 18 team in the country. They lost 31-28. They probably should have won the game. They were up 28-24 with three and a half minutes left. Gave up a long touchdown. Shiloh Sanders came back. He was awful. He should be sit for the rest of the year because their defense was so much better without him. Have
you seen the highlights?
Constantly, and he couldn't make a tackle in the open field against DJ Giddens, the Kansas State running back. He got dropped. Just
multiple times.
Yes. He's just out of place constantly. I know that you could chalk it up to him being rusty, but I've seen him do this stuff before. Right. But here's my take on Colorado. They're just substantially better team. This game a year ago against a top 25 opponent that is sort of has that toughness, that Chris Kleiman, let's run the ball, play good defense, that type of game last year, they would have lost it by 4 scores. This year, they're sticking in there.
Is K-State ranked?
Yeah, they're
18th. Yep.
Okay, I thought they fell out.
But like you watch them in that game, and they're actually sort of beefing up on the defensive front. Shedeur Sanders still playing good ball. And also, let's think about this. Travis Hunter was out after the first quarter. He didn't play the last 3 quarters of the game, and they still only lost by 3 to the number 18 team in the country.
Yeah.
And a team who's got a little bit of a physical edge about them.
It's definitely a different look.
As much as people have their biases and they want to continue to down Colorado every step of the way, this team is better. You can't act like it's the same that they were a year ago. I'm sorry.
It's not Colorado they want to down. It's Prime. They want to doubt. They want to continue to say.
No, I get it.
You know what I'm saying? That's the part of it. This team is different. This team is different.
There are people that can separate their biases from their takes.
Yeah. And
I don't see enough of that with Colorado. Yeah. You don't have to like Prime to admit that he's doing a pretty decent job after taking that 1-win team over. You know what I mean? I think you can separate those things, but not enough people are doing it.
Well, there is one player in college football this year that I think everybody in the country, if they watch him play, could say that he's just a phenomenal player, and that's Ashton Jeanty, man. We have not talked a lot about Ashton Jeanty and what he's doing on the field. Christian, talk to me, man. Dude, we haven't seen things like what Ashton Jeanty is doing in a very long time, right?
Since Barry Sanders set the single-season rushing record.
Yeah, 1988. He's been incredible. And I think, especially when it's a non-power player like Ashton Jeanty, you have a lot of people that will look at it and say, yeah, but, and I was hearing a lot of that through the first couple of weeks. But if you turn on the tape, it's not just, he's running over poor competition. It's it doesn't matter who they're playing. He is legitimately almost untackleable at times. His contact balance, his vision, his ability to just fight through arm tackles and bounce, the way that he bounces off defenders and doesn't, lose a step and continues in stride, and I haven't seen him get caught yet, he's just extremely impressive. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. 126 carries, 1,248 yards, 17 touchdowns, 9.9 yards per carry. Hasn't been nearly as busy as a receiver this year as he was last year. I think he had nearly 600 yards receiving last year. This year, he's not even over 100, but he did score his first receiving touchdown in this week's game against Hawaii. Went over 200 on the ground, had 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. He's unstoppable. And for him to be the Heisman front runner right now is extremely impressive. I don't know has a non-power, when's the last time a non-power 5 or non-power 4 player won Heisman? I think I saw something the other day that said the last finalist from a non-power school was Jordan Lynch from Northern Illinois.
NIU.
2015. But as far as winning it or being the favorite, at least in my lifetime, I can't think of one at 10.1.
It's him, big space, then everybody else. Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, I don't know after this week.
Yeah.
I think people need to start actually being like, one name I haven't seen, Cade Klubnik needs to start getting consideration the way he's been playing. And by the way, I'm getting so sick of this. There are real Heisman voters out there that like Diego Pavia, and that's a shame. That's an absolute crying shame.
Yeah.
He should not be considered.
No.
I'm sorry. There's just no reason to. They're 4-2. Cool. But no, we're not doing that. But no, his contact balance, some of the runs he makes are just silly. It's just, it makes no sense. He'll break 5 tackles. He'll break 5 tackles and go break a 50-yard touchdown run, which he leads the nation in, by the way, right now. And if people want to try to talk about the Mountain West, non-power 5, non-power or power 4, he had 192 yards against the number 2 team in the country in Oregon. He had 259 yards against an undefeated Washington State team. I heard somebody, I'm not going to name names, say, well, if they lose another game, I'm going to have to take him out of consideration. Kiss my ass. What if he runs for 290 yards and his team screws it up? His defense is horrible that night. There's no reason you should take him out of the consideration just because his team loses. It's about being the most outstanding player in college football. And I would say that a guy through 6 games who has 126 carries for 1,248 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns, who averages 10 yards a carry, that would fit the criteria of being the most outstanding college football player.
Yeah.
And if you're going to hold that other nonsense against him, you're a moron.
Yeah.
I despise the way you think about the Heisman and how the Heisman should be voted on.
Do you want to hear his long run from every game?
Go ahead.
77, 70, 68, 64, 75, 54. This week against Hawaii was his shortest long run in a game.
And by the way,
he also, one second, Gabe, Maddox Mazden, the starting quarterback, he has 15 yards less than him. 15 yards less than the starting quarterback.
I saw a stat about this, too. He has only participated in 17 of a 24 possible quarters.
Yeah.
Because they've been blowing people out, and he gets out at halftime.
Yep.
He's played in 17 quarters. And going back to that Barry Sanders 88 single-season record season, he's actually outpacing Barry Sanders by 92 yards through 6 games.
Yeah.
So if you are not paying attention to the guy, it's about that time.
I went to a school in Arkansas my freshman year of college called Ouachita Baptist University, and we had a bunch of friends that loved to watch football, and we heard about this kid who was a senior in Arkansas that was choosing between Arkansas and Memphis to go to college, and we were like, let's go check this kid out. So we went to Little Rock, right, and watched the championship game. And it's this little small school called Wynn High School out of Wynn, Arkansas. And we saw this kid, and it got down to the point, Gabe and Christian, where we would start making bets. We were in the stands. We knew nothing about these guys, but we started making bets. Like, okay, this running back, how long is it going to take? How many plays on this drive will it take him to score a touchdown? And like the highest total was like 3, right? Like most of the time it was like one run this way, the other run 70 yards this way. It was D'Angelo Williams. He ran for almost 300 something yards in that championship game. It was stupid. It was dumb. Ashton Jeanty is doing this in college at a high level. This is what he's doing right now. That is the last time I remember going, how many plays is it going to take for a player to just score a touchdown 7 yards this way, 78 yards the other way? And that's what he's doing right now. It's unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, but if this, maybe we'll clip some of what I've said, but if you're a Heisman voter out there, and
nothing.
You're gonna hold some type of loss from Boise State over Ashton Jeanty's head the rest of the way. You are my worst enemy for the rest of the college football season. You're my worst enemy.
Well, I'll say this. I know we have Power 4 conferences. The Mountain West has sneaky become my favorite non-Power 4 conference teams to watch. They are fun. I enjoy watching those games. I'll just say that. So
by the way, no one want to hear something funny real quick before we get out of here. Do you know which non-Power 4, Power 5 conference has the most ranked teams? Do you know?
I would say.
Is it the AAC now?
That'd be the American Athletic Conference.
They got 2. Army Navy.
Army Navy, right?
That's nasty work, baby.
That is nasty business.
It's dirty.
That is dirty.
All right, boys. Let's call it a day on this one. We appreciate you guys for joining us. If you are watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and comment there. If you're listening, whether that's on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, you can do the same there. You can also head over to bluffcitymedia.co. Check out all the articles, podcasts, and videos on the site. Once again, we thank you guys for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.